Welcome back, everybody. Cardano has been pumping recently, and we're going to cover why, but even more importantly, we're going to talk about why Cardano is likely headed for a crash to a new low before heading back up to a new leg up and a new high. So let's break this down right now. First of all, I want to dive into a couple of on-chain analytical pieces for Cardano here just in the last 2 months or so. The first thing I want to highlight is that we seem to have found somewhat of a bottom on the adjusted volume per day over the last course of the last 2 months, and especially longer than this. We've seen kind of this steady decline in volume per day, and it seems as though we've seen somewhat of a bottom here around 9.1 billion right here. So it obviously more time will tell whether or not that's a true bottom, but it seems as though we've finally seen somewhat of a reversal in trade volume, and I think that's a big reason why we've also seen the reversal in price action. The other thing I wanted to note is right here. We've also seen a pretty big U-turn in the total value locked for the Cardano ecosystem. So we had been fluttering pretty low down in the 120s, even below that 120 million. But now we're kind of fighting that 191 million-ish point in total value locked. And so if we go over here to DeFi Llama, you can see a little bit more about what I'm talking about, right? So we really struggled to get kind of past this 150, high 150 million mark right here. And now we're kind of trying to shoot for 180 million and above in total value locked. That's kind of been the, quote unquote resistance, if you will, for the last few months. Or not the last few months, just basically through the month of May. We've kind of flatlined here, and it seems like we're having a little bit of a bullish swing, bullish demand in the Cardano ecosystem. So always good to see that. The other thing I wanted to point out is that the new ADA wallets per day has kind of been pretty steady, adding about the same, give or take the same amount of wallets every day. We haven't necessarily seen a huge uptick in that, so that's also interesting. It seems as though it's more so whales moving and making decisions, moving the market. And I think that's also, pretty apparent here, right? So, excuse me, it's actually this one. So we're seeing here, this is kind of the breakdown and distribution of smaller ADA holders to larger ADA holders. And you can see over time, a lot of these, obviously the bottom holders who hold 1 to 10 ADA, these seahorses down here, obviously that goes up as well. But if you look over time here, you're mostly seeing the gains in, this level, people who hold 10 to 20, 100 to 500 ADA, and then so on and so forth, thousands of ADA. You see that area growing quicker than you do this bottom piece. So what that tells us is more people are adding to larger bags of ADA as opposed to more people coming into the ecosystem with new money. So that's kind of how I break down what we've seen recently, why we're kind of seeing this uptick in ADA's price. But the other thing I want to mention about Cardano is this exciting update that's come. Iagon releases an Ethereum Cardano bridge for USDC transactions. So it's now possible to bridge from Ethereum to Cardano network in order to transfer the world's second largest stablecoin, USDC. So obviously, if you guys are familiar with bridging, basically using a cross-chain bridge makes it possible to convert crypto assets from one blockchain into a format that can be used in another ecosystem. So it's a lot easier for people to come from other ecosystems, use USDC in the Cardano ecosystem to then buy additional Cardano, or use USDC within that ecosystem. So this does make it easier for people to come into the Cardano ecosystem overall. That could be a reason why we're seeing that boost in total value locked. Or, obviously this could be more of a kind of long-term impact piece as well. So definitely exciting news here as Cardano becomes more and more accessible for developers and users to its ecosystem. So now I want to go into, now that we've covered the news, I want to go into why we're likely going to see a leg down for ADA before we see another leg up. So I wanted to point you guys to this visual. So this kind of breaks down the Cardano chart with their big releases. So obviously Byron first, Shelly, GoGen, and now Basho coming out. You can see on the Cardano roadmap, all of these different named sections of their roadmap here. GoGen was smart contracts. Basho is more so for scaling. And then we have Voltaire coming after Basho for governance. But this breaks it down pretty clearly, showing when these releases are. And a lot of the time what you'll see is a steady lead up to the release, a little bit of a pullback and another run. Obviously, it didn't really happen here. I think, we had a lot of that Bitcoin pullback and other kind of market shifts that happened on the macro side that maybe prevented that. But now this interesting visual is kind of suggesting, hey, we might see somewhat of, downward to sideways trend here, but then a couple months outside of Basho, we might see somewhat of a tick to the upside. So maybe 2 months away from the update. I believe the update is late this year or early next year. So really, really hard to say, but I think this kind of indicates that we could be headed down or sideways leading up to the release. And then once we're, closer to the release, maybe a couple months out, we'll start seeing that reversal to the upside leading up to the actual launch. And then after that, maybe a slight pullback like we've seen here, and then some of these other release times. So just something for food for thought, just to keep an eye out on. The other thing I wanted to bring up was the ADA chart. I think this kind of helps put a lot of things in perspective. So one of the things that, can get really, really hard to delineate from is when you're in these crazy green days, right? And, we're up whatever it is, 15%, 25% in a day, like Cardano did just a couple days ago or just yesterday. It's really, really hard to, remind ourselves that we need to zoom out a little bit, right? When in doubt, zoom out. And so right here, I just wanted to point out a couple of other critical times in the chart when we had these kind of fake outs, if you will. And so my argument here is kind of that, Cardano has done this before. It's not unique. It's faked out a bunch of times on its kind of larger downtrend here, right? So we've been on a downtrend, since late September. And ever since then, we've had some of these little fake outs to the upside. Oh, it's time to bounce. Boom, here. Boom, it happens here again. You can even, argue here as well. But I mean, these aren't, any little fake outs. I mean, this one was to the tune of 50%. We haven't quite gotten there with this most recent one, but with what's going on, and I guess, since the bottom, it's actually almost been 50%. But what I'm trying to get at here is that there's still a lot going on from a macro perspective. It's going to take a lot for all of crypto to reverse, for all of, Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything to reverse. I think that Bitcoin could be headed for another leg down before going back up, maybe below 25K. So I think that we're going to see, another leg down similar to what we saw, let's say, for example, here, right? So we pump about, 50 to 60%. We come off this new low, and then when we try to come back down and retest this, what you can see happens is we get a slight bounce right here, but then eventually we fall below it and we big red candle down till the next support. I could definitely see something like this happening where this was obviously our low previously. We see maybe let's say another, we come down here, correct a little, maybe another 10, 15%. And then once that's done, we'll probably see kind of a slow decline back down to that low, and then potentially dropping back to that low here, or at the very least, somewhat of a consolidation here before moving past this back to another, at least short-term high. So that's kind of my reasoning behind it. I don't think we'll be seeing, a near-term high at any time soon for Cardano. Like I don't think we'll be breaking back above $1.20, $1.25 up in this range at all anytime soon. We've done these fake outs before, as I've mentioned, and it's really, really not rare to do, something like 40 or 50% like we've done here, and essentially tease it and then come right back down to then set another low. So it's very, very possible, especially with Ukraine and Russia, inflation, depending on what Bitcoin does, what the rest of the market does. We have the Fed meeting for inflation and interest rate hiking. We'll figure out whether that's going to be 50 basis or 75 basis points, but that's coming June 14th. So we need to keep our eye out on that. But I wanted to get this video out because I think a lot of people are thinking about FOMOing right now into Cardano. But when we zoom out, we can see that this is kind of par for the course. Over and over again, we get faked out into thinking that it's going to be the bottom, and then we eventually lose that bottom to then find another here. And I think it's a very high likelihood we do that here and then find another bottom. So just be very, very wary. Wanted to get this out to you guys. Thank you so much for watching, and drop a like if you got value. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.